Hello. I want to talk today about 7 types of dreaming in C.S. Lewis. There are, in his work broadly speaking, 7 types of dreaming state. And to start with is what I'd call actual dreams. And Lewis tells us about some of his own actual dreams. In the autobiographical Surprised by Joy, he describes childhood nightmares he had. Nightmares were the only thing that disturbed his childhood happiness, he tells us. Dreams of ghosts and insects, and the ones about insects were by far the worst. One of the adventures in the voyage of the Dawn Treader is when they come to the island where dreams come true, or more accurately put, where nightmares come true. And I wonder if Lewis put some of his own nightmare horrors into that. His horror of insects' angular limbs, their jerky movements, their dry metallic noises, all suggesting either machines that have come to life or life degenerating into mechanism. So we guess in the voyage of the Dawn Treader, "Do you hear a noise like a huge pair of scissors opening and shutting over there?" Eustace asked Rhinoff. "Hush," said Rhinoff. "I can hear them crawling up the sides of the ship." "It's just going to settle on the mast," said Caspian. And they're remembering the dreams that make you afraid of going to sleep again. And it all becomes associated with madness when they hear a voice in the darkness screaming out, either of some inhuman voice or else a voice of one in such extremity of terror that he'd almost lost his humanity. It's the voice of the Lord Roop, who they rescue from this horrible place. Lewis had seen madness firsthand during his postgraduate years. He lived in Oxford with a woman called Mrs. Moore and her daughter, and Mrs. Moore had a brother who spent some weeks staying with them, having frequent fits, which Lewis describes with graphic detail in his journal and in letters to his friend Arthur Greaves. He warns Arthur, "We hold our mental health by a thread. Nothing is worth risking for it." On a more positive note, Lewis said about the Narnia Chronicles, he'd been having strange dreams about lions when he began writing the books, which is one of the reasons he represented Christ in the Narnian world as a lion, who arrives on the scene halfway through The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. The next category of dreams is what I'd call supernatural dreams. And several characters have these in his fiction. In That Hideous Strength, from the Space Trilogy, Jane has dreams which are a kind of second sight. She's identified as a seer with power of dreaming realities. And she comes to view them as bringers of information from the world out there, bringers of news, a murder, a scientific experiment, and so on. And the things she sees in her dreams come true, or have already come true. And then later in the novel, she has a rather dramatic and frightening vision of a supernatural personage actually present in the room. And this vision is identified by Lewis as a very different thing to her dreams. It never occurred to her to think she was dreaming. People mistake dreams for visions. No one ever mistook a vision for a dream. In The Silver Chair, Jill has a dream while she sleeps in the giant's castle at Harfang, in which Aslan appears to her and reminds her of the signs she's neglected to follow or keep in mind, so critical to rescue Prince Rilian. And when she wakes up the next day, she's totally forgotten the dream. It's a common phenomenon, isn't it? But it's there, ready to be called back to mind given the appropriate trigger. And in the last battle, King Tyrion, tied to a tree by his enemies, has a vivid dream in the night, a window into a parallel reality in our world, where he sees all the heroes and heroines of the earlier Narnia stories gathered together for a dinner, and he calls to them for help. And when he comes to, it's a grim moment of misery coming back to himself and the reality of the cold, dark night. Lewis was influenced by the Romantic poets of the 19th century, and with their interest in altered states of consciousness, including dream, as being closely related to the imagination, poetic sensibilities that can allow us, as Wordsworth put it, to see into the life of things. And this is perhaps the case in the next 5 categories. And one use of dream in Lewis is to describe states of mind and perception, good or bad. So in Perelandra, the second space story, the planet seems like a dream to Ransom because to him it's so strange, so marvellous, so other. At Ransom's waking, something happened to him which perhaps never happens to a man until he's out of his own world. He saw reality and thought it was a dream. He opened his eyes and saw a strange heraldically coloured tree loaded with yellow fruits and silver leaves. Round the base of the indigo stem was coiled a small dragon covered with scales of red gold. He recognised the garden of the Hesperides at once. This is the most vivid dream I've ever had, he thought, and by some means or other he then realised that he was awake. In the line The Witch and the Wardrobe, as the beavers and the children journey through Narnia, it's like a delicious dream. They're feeling very dreamy, and this describes their wonder and their joy at the coming of spring and the undoing of the witch's spell of always winter and never Christmas. They're in a dreamy state of joy. By contrast, Edmund's disastrous experience with the witch travelling across Narnia in the snow without a coat becomes like a bad dream with the hope that waking from it will come soon, only it doesn't. In Prince Caspian, as they try to sleep one night on the way to Aslan's How, Lucy's wakefulness in the woods under the delightfulness of the Narnian stars and the moon glistening on the creek between the shadowy trees is an odd nighttime, dreamish kind of wakefulness. And later, their journeying down the gorge by moonlight is again odd and dreamlike. In the last battle, all the creatures of Narnia in the end passed through the stable door into the new Narnia, including everything from monopods to the stars even, and it seemed rather like a dream at the time and rather hard to remember properly afterwards, especially one couldn't say how long it had taken. Sometimes it seemed to have lasted only a few minutes, but at others it felt as if it might have gone on for years. A lot of crazy apocalyptic events seem to be sped up like a time lapse until Peter finally shuts and locks the stable door with a golden key. It's all of a very strange reality, as if they're seeing something that the human form's not really built for, so it has very dreamlike qualities. My fourth category of dream describes something lost or remote, just as a dream or the memory of a dream slips away and is hard to call back, but in which the thing dreamt is truly something real, and perhaps a reality different to the one we're used to. And there are, I think, overtones that faith is called for in these cases. In the line The Witch and the Wardrobe, where nobody believes her and the back of the wardrobe is indeed only the back of a wardrobe, even Lucy wonders if Narnia is just a dream after all. By this time she was beginning to wonder herself whether Narnia and the faun had not been a dream. In Prince Caspian, on waking up the morning after the moonlit dance of fauns at Dancing Lawn, Caspian could hardly believe that it had not all been a dream, if it weren't for the cloven hoof marks on the earth. In The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Eustace wonders if his encounter with Aslan, all moonlit on a moonless night, high in the mountains of Dragon Island, was all a dream, especially as there are gaps in his memory about how some things came about, like how he got clothed and how he got back down to the seashore. In The Horse and His Boy, Shasta wonders if his encounter with Aslan was all a dream, but there's the lion's deep paw print to prove it. And at the end of that story, there's a fleeting moment of transcendence, which, rather dreamlike, after battle is won and order restored and Rabadash turned into a donkey, Aslan seems to vanish. And it says, there was a short silence, and then they all stirred and looked at one another, as if they were waking from sleep. Aslan was gone. But there was a brightness in the air and on the grass, and a joy in their hearts, which assured them that he had been no dream. And anyway, there was the donkey in front of them. In The Magician's Nephew, in the dreamy wood between the worlds, Polly and Diggory wonder sleepily if their lives in London were only a dream. And this time, dream is used to contrast the different realities of two worlds. Which brings me to the next category. Now we get into still more mystical territory. And for number 5, we have dream as something almost remembered, and often of huge significance if only we could grasp it. The line The Witch and the Wardrobe says, so they lived in great joy, and if ever they remembered their life in this world, 'twas only as one remembers a dream. But at the end, lifetime later, the grown-up 4 kings and queens of Narnia come upon a lamppost deep in the forest of Lantern Waste, and it seems familiar to King Edmund, as though he's seen it before, as it were in a dream, or in the dream of a dream. It's as though the dream of a dream is a distant intimation of the soul of some other reality. And perhaps, too, this is how it'll be for us in the next life, when we've woken up, as it were, and this life seems like a forgotten dream. More on that in a minute. Earlier in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, when the children are new to this strange new world of Narnia, Mr. Beaver tells them for the first time about Aslan. And on first hearing that name, Aslan, it gives them a sudden sense of some enormous significance. It's like a dream so beautiful that you remember it all your life and are always wishing you could get into that dream again. It's really the feeling Lewis called the Sehnsucht joy, the joy with a piercingly sweet longing for something, the fleeting stab of joy that Lewis speaks of in his autobiography, here like a heartbreakingly beautiful dream that you always wish you could get back into. It's rather like the story that Lucy reads in The Magician's Book in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which is billed as a spell for the refreshment of the spirit. And while Lucy's reading it, it's like she's actually living the story. That's an idea Lewis got from George MacDonald's Fantastes, when the hero there, Anados, reads books in the library of a palace in fairyland. She was living in the story as if it were real, and all the pictures were real too. And when she got to the 3rd page and came to the end, she said, "That is the loveliest story I've ever read or ever shall read in my whole life. Oh, I wish I could have gone on reading it for 10 years. At least I'll read it over again." But here part of the magic of the book came into play. You couldn't turn back. The right-hand pages, the ones ahead, could be turned. The left-hand pages could not. "Oh, what a shame," said Lucy. "I did so want to read it again." "Well, at least I must remember it. Let's see. It was about... Oh dear, it's all fading away again. And even this last page is going blank. This is a very queer book. How can I have forgotten? It was about a cup and a sword and a tree and a green hill. I know that much. But I can't remember. What shall I do?" And she never could remember. And ever since that day, what Lucy means by a good story is a story which reminds her of the forgotten story in The Magician's Book. It's the soul memory of a forgotten story, the dream of a dream, the desire for another home. In Surprised by Joy, Lewis says, "All joy reminds. It's never a possession, always a desire for something longer ago or further away or still about to be. Ultimately, it's a pointer to another world and to Christ." In Mere Christianity, he wrote, "If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world." As Jewel the unicorn says at the end of the last battle, "I have come home at last. This is my real country. I belong here. This is the land I've been looking for all my life, though I never knew it till now." Then, sixthly, we have dream as something opposed to reality, and evil as no more than a dream. Across the Narnia Chronicles, the word dream comes up on average 17 times in each book, and in the Silver Chair it's 24 times, mainly on account of Jill's visionary dream at Harfang, which I mentioned earlier, and then the witch's lengthy attempt to persuade Jill, Eustace, Puddleglum and the newly unenchanted Prince Rilian that the world above ground is not real, just a dream. Already we've been told, after so many days underground, they began to wonder whether sun and blue skies and wind and birds had not been only a dream. They're beginning already to lose touch with reality, which perhaps makes them vulnerable under her enchantment to the witch's deception that our world and the sun and the lion are just a dream. It's all wonderfully countered by Puddleglum, who asserts the reality of these things despite her arguments. And at the end, there's a wonderful reversal. Once they're back above the ground, after only 10 minutes, it says, it's the witch's kingdom that seems like a dream and not reality, as if evil and all dark enchantment was unreality all along. Only 10 minutes. Yet already it felt to Jill and Eustace as if all their dangers in the dark and heat and general smotheriness of the earth must have been only a dream. Out here in the cold with the moon and the huge stars overhead. Narnian stars are nearer than stars in our world. And with kind, merry faces all around them, one couldn't quite believe in Underland. And last, but far from least, comes dream as the precursor to waking up. Dream is often intimately tied in with the whole theme of waking up in Lewis. Waking up as spiritual growth or becoming more alive to God on increasing levels through life, and also waking up literally to a whole new reality in the age to come, on the new earth and new heaven. Dreaming, of course, is a function of being asleep, but being aware you're dreaming is a kind of in-between state, pre-waking, and that's a good thing as far as our waking to new levels of love for God is concerned. Lewis argues this in the Four Loves. To know that one is dreaming is to be no longer perfectly asleep. In a letter the year before he died, Lewis said this: "Dear Mr. Lofstrom, you are, of course, perfectly right in defining your problem, which is also mine and everyone's, as excessive selfness. But perhaps you don't fully realise how far you've got by so defining it. All have this disease. Fortunate are the minority who know they have it. To know that one is dreaming is to be already nearly awake, even if, for the present, one can't wake up fully. And you've actually got further than that. You've got beyond the illusion, very common, that to recognise a chasm is the same thing as building a bridge over it. To be aware of our shortcomings indicates we're already nearly awake. Now we need to live with the waking state in mind, because the awareness of sleep is one thing, but to live morally and spiritually awake is another. In The Magician's Nephew, Strawberry the horse thinks his whole life back in London just a muddled dream before Aslan woke us all up a few minutes ago. That is, before Aslan made him a talking beast. In Mere Christianity, Lewis says that when the time comes for us to be united with God, to be drawn into Christ, to be presented to the Father, the bad dream will be over. It will be morning. And here our current state's like a dream from which we will awaken. In that hideous strength, Ransom knows he's soon to pass to another reality, to the third heaven, Perilandra, such that his current state on earth already seems like a dream. Now that it's so very nearly time for me to go, he says, all this begins to feel like a dream, a happy dream, you understand, all of it, even the pain. In the last battle, the Lord Diggory says, all of the old Narnia that mattered, all the dear creatures have been drawn into the real Narnia through the door. And of course it's different as a real thing is from a shadow, or as a waking life is from a dream. And at the end, Aslan declares, the term is over, the holidays have begun, the dream is ended. This is the morning. To one correspondent, Lewis wrote, think of yourself just as a seed patiently waiting in the earth, waiting to come up a flower in the gardener's good time, up into the real world, the real waking. We are here in the land of dreams, but cockcrow is coming. It is nearer now than when I began this letter. And it's nearer now than when I began this YouTube video. This is my 53rd consecutive weekly video. In other words, I've done it for a year and a day in true fairy tale fashion, and I'm going to take a break from it now. So thank you for watching, and may you have the dreams that are so beautiful that you remember it all your life and are always wishing you could get into that dream again.